All right. I recorded this digitizing a design of the angel for the angel Raphael, uh, but the voice sounds like it's coming out of a tunnel or the bottom of a well. So I'm going to voice over the and explain what's going on in the digitizing. Uh, I got a picture of. I want to do a picture of each of the design of for each of the seven angels that are in charge of the different patrons, I guess you would call them, of the different sacraments. And Raphael is in charge of the his name is Medicine of God. He's in charge of the sacrament of penance. So I got this picture of Raphael, and I want to digitize it and make it into a design to be used on a vestment. First thing I do is take it into a photo editing program, and I erase the background. Now, there's several ways you can erase a background, and I guess it varies from program to program. The one I use is cheap or free, something like that, because I only use it. The only thing I ever use it for is to take backgrounds out of pictures. I take out the background and then I put in another color, and I'll explain why later. But I can. Some of them use magic. It has what they call a magic wand, where you can click on something, it'll pick up all of that color, and you can erase it instantly. But that leaves too much garbage behind. I just use the eraser and go around the whole design and cut out the background, which is what I'm doing here. The checkerboard pattern means that there is no background there. Sometimes you can get pictures off the internet that already have the background out of them, but they're not suitable for what I use them for. I guess they're used by other people for brochures and things like that. So I have to take out my own backgrounds, and that's what I'm doing here. Is just going around first with a larger brush. I could even use a larger one than that, and taking out the main area, and then using a smaller brush and getting in very close around the very edge. And I'm not going to make you watch me do the whole thing. I'm just going to do part of this side, and now I'll do part of the other side, and then I'm going to skip to the finished, what looks like finished. So this is it done with all the background out all the way around, including small spaces around his wings and his clothing. The next thing to do is to put in another color in the background. And that's going to be a color that is not one that I would ever use, and is not in this design. The reason I do that is because when you take the design over into an embroidery program like PE Design, or I think Digitizer does the same thing, it doesn't like there not being a background. So it puts a background in, usually white. And since there's always white, almost always white in the design, that can cause problems when you want to eliminate the background, because you'll get other things besides the background. So I usually put in a really outrageous color like neon pink or lime green, and those colors are very easy to separate from the design, or any color that's not in it at all. In this one, I could even use probably a pale blue. I just picked up my fill tool, and I can see that it's already got lime green in it from the last one I did, so I'm just going to go with that. And you just click those spaces, and it fills it in with the green. And then you can look at it closely. You'll see that there's lots of little areas where you missed. And you miss more if you use the magic tool and some of those other things. So what I do is I take the paintbrush with the same lime green and just go over any spots or dirty things that got left behind. And that's what I'm doing here, just cleaning up the background. Because when I do bring it into Digitizer, if it sees something out there, it may try to add that into the design. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but the better it is, the better, it will be when you're finished. Afterwards, then I decided that I didn't like this halo. It's just too busy and it detracts. I also don't like the yellow around his head, this almost the same color as his hair. So I'm going to take out this whole area and make my own halo. I'm probably going to use just the outer edge of this halo, the deep red part, and whatever the background is of the fabric that I end up using, I may add something in. But right now I'm just going around the edge, just marking close to the edge. Then I can switch to a larger brush and without worrying about erasing details and go in and erase the rest of it. So I'm just going around the whole thing, and then I will do this. I'll finish taking out that piece of background and then add the lime green in there. So now switching brush sizes. I don't use, as I say, don't use photo editing programs very much. I just learned how to do one or two things that I need to do, which is this. And my sister is a commercial artist, and I know she knows all the ins and outs of Adobe. And first of all, I can't even afford Adobe, but this program is from Sarah. Can't remember what it's called. Photo something. But anyway, it was very cheap. I think they gave it to me free when I bought a word processing thing to try out. And later I found I liked it for this. It was very simple to use. They no longer make it. In fact, I don't even think they're even a company anymore. That's how old this program is. But it satisfies my needs, so I haven't gone to anything bigger and better. It would be nice, probably, having one of those fancy ones would probably be a lot faster, but hey, it works. It's cheap. And so now I have all the background gone, so now I'll just add in that green. I'm just cleaning up a little bit more. Another way to do this would be, instead of taking out the background, just using the paintbrush and painting the lime green in all the areas. I've done that too, and it saves a step. Now I've got the lime green. I have to just clean up all the little things that I missed. If you paint in the background, you don't miss those things. Oops. I don't stop and save often enough. I mean, when you click off and then click on again, you only have to undo from your last click. And I tend to just do a large area before I remember I haven't clicked off. I do that digitizing too. It's a bad habit. You make a mistake, and I have to undo it. You undo a lot more than you need to. Okay, so he looks a lot better without that busyness behind his head. So now the next step that I have, now that I have the photo, is to save it and take it into PE Design, because I'm going to make this as a photo stitch and then edit the photo stitch in Digitizer. It's a 3-step process when I do photo stitch. I could go directly into Digitizer and digitize it, but I want, with figures like this, I like the photo effect, the tiny little stitches that make it look almost like a photo. And even though it's a bit more work, having to go through all this. They look so much nicer in the end. So now I'm going to bring it into here, and see, I turned off the wizard because you have to make the picture about the same size as what you want your finished picture to be. So it came in very small, so I enlarged it. You don't want to make it until it's the size the finished product. So, and I'm going to do it just as a rectangle because this was the whole point of putting the green background in. Now, usually do 20 colors, but because this has a green background, I'm going to do 25 because 5 of those colors are going to be in that background. Almost always it takes about 5 colors. Sometimes more, sometimes less, but so I ran it up to 25 colors. I told it I wanted fine stitching, and now I'm looking at the contrast and picking out one that I like. It's always the center bottom one, but you can pick the others if you like them better. And you can still adjust it at this point, changing the contrast, adding more colors, taking off more colors, but this is pretty much it. It doesn't take me long in photostitch to have it done if you've taken away the background. Now I'm bringing it into Digitizer, and it's going to bring it in sideways because Brother Program, which is what PE Design is, their hoops are different than mine. Their hoops run the other direction. So it's made for, PE Design is made for the Brother machine, like Digitizer is made for Janome machines. Bernina has theirs, Pfaff has theirs, Huskova has theirs. Everybody has their own version. So it'll bring it in sideways, but it's very easy to turn it around. So right now I'm getting my file, and I could have sent it over from PE Designs in a Jeff file, but I found that it's not the best thing to do. First of all, it tends to break the file up into many small pieces, but mostly I lose colors when I bring it over, and I'll show you in a minute what I'm talking about as soon as this finishes loading. Most programs, whether they're Digitizer or PE Design, have the same bells and whistles. They all do pretty much the same thing. So though you may not have Digitizer, you may have another program, if you're familiar with your program, you should be able to do what I'm doing with yours. Yes, PE Design, you do need that for the photo stitch part. My problem is Digitizer has a photo stitch, but I don't like theirs. And I'm sure other programs have photo stitch too, but PE Design has a really good photo stitch, and that's all I use their program for. I should probably one of these days learn to do some of the other things, but I'm comfortable with Digitizer, and hey, I'm getting too old to you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I've learned this much. I'd like to get the Fabriani program, but it's too expensive. I can't afford that right now. Probably never will be able to afford it. But it's, on my wish list. Okay, so see, it brought it in sideways. Now I'm going to rotate it 270 degrees because it's already 90. And that should put it straight up and down. And it takes a while because even while I was doing this, I was also photographing it. I was doing a screen capture video with it. And Digitizer itself is a huge program and uses a lot of memory, and it doesn't like working with any other program open, especially one that uses memory like the video program. Now I'm going to move it into the middle of the hoop. This is my large hoop, the one I like the best, prefer the most, the snap hoop. It's not snap hoop, it's magna hoop, I think it's called. I call it snap hoop because it snaps. All right, it's not quite center. Let me see. If you line up the lines with the crosshairs in the hoop, you'll know you're centered. It doesn't really have to be centered, but it helps to be centered, especially when you're putting a border around something. At least then you know that your border is even on all sides, and this will have a border. So I'm trying to get it roughly in the center. It can be a little bit off. You can always adjust it afterwards or adjust the border if it's 1/8 of an inch off in one direction or another. Sometimes being exactly centered doesn't even look good inside the border. All right, now I'm going to look at my colors, and I'm going to start looking at the greens. And I'm going to click on them. Of course, everything's grouped, so I have to ungroup it first. And now click on, I'm only interested in the greens right now because I want to see which ones are background colors and which are part of the design. So this first one I clicked on appears to be part of the design. Shows up yellow here, but on the Digitizer kind of shows like a light green, and it's actually part of the design. This one, however, is purely background, so we can delete that. This is also background. It goes. And so let's see, there's another green here, and that's outside edges, and that goes. So we've taken about 3 or 4 of the colors out already. And now notice that some of the other colors here are repeats. See, there's 2 reds, there's 2 oranges, and if you look, the numbers are the same numbers, even though they're separated by distances. That's because PE Design saw them as separate colors, shades of difference. And when it was brought over into Digitizer, Digitizer sees them as basically the same colors. Now, if I had saved this as a JEF file and then brought it in, it would have actually eliminated those duplicate colors. And I don't like it to eliminate the colors because photostitch saw them as separate colors, so there is some variation between them, and this might be a variation I want to keep. So I'll go down through it now and give it my colors. Again, I showed you how I set up, and my setup has a palette of colors. They're the colors along the bottom that I use. They're the colors that I know that I have, and the ones that I used most often. Just like a painter has their palette, these are the colors, these are the threads that I use the most. And again, when you bring a design in like this, it eliminates the first 20 or however many colors are in the design. And that's why I repeat the first 20 colors, because I almost always use 20 colors. So now I'm going to go down, and the brothers' design colors are the threads are the first 20, or what's left of them. And I'm going to start using my colors. So the first one is a gray. And usually P Design does colors lightest to darkest. And the fact that that gray is the very first color means that it wants it there for a reason. Probably the other colors going on top of it will tone it down. And so I changed it to a gray from my palette. The second one is that yellow, which it thought was green. And that's a color that is part of his robe. It's the sashing on his robe. And I'd want to see what the color really is. So I'm going to bring in the artwork. So I'm getting the artwork and bringing it in, and then I will have to resize it so that it's the same size as the picture. Doesn't have to be exactly the same size, but it's helpful. if I were planning to digitize this so that it was sew on a printed fabric, then it would have to be the same size, like I did with the angel, the angel for that angel vestment. But this one is going to be a standalone applique, and it doesn't have to be. So see how small the picture is? So now I'm going to make it as big as, I'll drag the top corner and the bottom corner till they even with the top and bottom of that angel, and it should pretty much be the same size. And then I'll put it underneath it to double check and line things up. Make sure that you can tell by the edges whether things stick out. And another way of checking it is to hide colors and pick one color, like the black or something, and see where that falls in the design. And that'll give you an idea of whether you have things exactly lined up. So this looks pretty good. I don't see... Make a slight adjustment there, I guess. Okay. So now I'm going to drag it out to the side so I can see, now that they're the same size, what we're looking at here. What colors are we really looking at? So this first color here, the one that appears to be yellow, is the sash, and it does look yellow. So but I'm probably more in the gold range. So, and this part of his halo is part of that. So I'm going to change it to, and that's what I'm going to do, is go down each of these colors and change it to my colors. I'm going to change it to a yellow from my palette. And the next one is flesh color. It's a lot of his face, his hands. It's also light. And I'm going to change that to what one is called muslin. On this palette, it looks a little dark. The two colors look switched. Oat and muslin are oat really is the color of muslin, and muslin really is the color of oat in the palette. Sometimes I use the color, purposely choose the opposite color, just so that I can see what it's going to look like when it sews out. But then I always switch it back before I save it, because I like it to tell me what the right thread numbers. So muslin is a light eggshell sort of, and oat is a pale yellowish ecru. It's a very pale ecru. But it's a little darker than muslin, even though here muslin looks darker than oat. All right, so the next color is white, and so I switched that for white. And the next color seems to be a gold. And I've added a new color to my palette, but I haven't added it on my template here. And that's I think it's called Sunflower. It's a nice gold, and I use it a lot, but I unfortunately keep forgetting to add it into my palette. So when I find I need it, and I almost always do, I have to add it, which is what I just did there. And now it's getting into the pinks. Again, this is kind of in the face. And this is going to be a very, what I call shrimp pink or flesh color. Be a lot lighter than that pink that they have there. The next one is in the wings, and it looks like an orange. And again, since I know it's going light to dark, I'm going to do the lighter orange that I have. And then the next one is a brown. And again, it's facial, so it's going to be a very light brown. And it has some of his hair color. So it's going to be a color that I think it's called pecan. It's a very light brown. The next one again is wings, orange, but it'll be the darker orange. But it showed up as only a few things, so it wasn't worth wasting a color on. So I'm going to combine those. That's why I dragged it up there, and then changed it to the same orange as the other one and just combined them. This one is a purplish, and I see it in the picture, but I'm not sure whether I want to keep it purple or not. So I'm going to leave it for now. I'll come back to it. It's mostly the halo, but I don't see too much in the wings there. So I'll leave it. The next one is another brown. Again, it looks like shading in the wing areas. His staff, so it's going to be wood. It's mostly the staff. So it'll be a darker brown. So I picked, I think it's called bark. It's a medium brown. Again, the next one is a red, and it's in his clothing and on the globe that he's holding. And you can see there's a number of reds. So this is going to be like the lightest of the reds. So I'll probably make this the lightest of the reds, which I use, which is called tea berry. And the next one is major part of the wings. That's going to be either a very deep gold or a deep orange. And it doesn't matter what colors you make them right now. You can always go back and change them. You can't if you combine them. Well, you can undo it, but... So this is, again, the deep shading in his gown. And that's going to be a burgundy. Be the darkest. I don't deal in too much in reds, mostly in deep rose colors from pale rose to burgundy. All right, that looks like a brown, very dark brown, or another, or again, burgundy. I can combine it with the other burgundy, or I can make it a brown. That's a dark gray. Then I'll make that my dark gray. And then the next one looks like a purple. I might combine that other purple with it. Yep, that's what I'm doing. I'm leaving them together. I still haven't decided, because if I combine them and then I change my mind, I'll have to undo, and I'll have to undo a lot of things. So right now I'm just going to leave them together and then decide afterwards whether I want to combine them or not. Okay, this again is in the brown or burgundy range. Looks like I'm making it burgundy. And now I'm looking at the other burgundy to see whether I want to combine those. And I may change the other burgundy to something else. And that looks like black. And yes, I'm making it black. And last color, it looks like red. And it looks like one I can totally throw away because I see almost nothing on it that is that color. I guess I decided to keep it and combine it with brown. Make it a brown. Okay, so this is what it looks like now. And I'm really not interested in his face because that I'm going to totally rework. I'm only interested in his clothing, his wings. And right now I just want to have the basic colors down. I can go in and edit individual colors. If I don't like it, it's like, say, the black in his gown. If I want to change that to something else, it's easy to do. First thing that I see that I'm going to want to change is I'm going to want to put in line, more detail on the, for example, the globe. You can't tell that's a chiro on there. So I'll have to make that better. I'll also put lines in the wings so you can see the individual feathers. Maybe not every single feather, but at least make it look more like wings instead of flames coming out from behind him. I'll probably also clean up his staff and his hands, and then I'll redo his head. So that's what that's the work that it looks like I'm going to need to do to it. And that is a lot easier to do than to try and do the whole thing from scratch. So now I'm moving the picture back behind it so that I can work. For example, when I go to put the lines in the wings and the chiro, I'm going to want to use the background as a guide. So what I will do is I will hide all the colors except maybe one or two that I need, and then work directly on the background. So I want to get everything lined up correctly so that, for example, when I make the lines on his wings, that they actually go where they're supposed to go on his real wings. So now I'm going to hide everything. Looks like, I think I'm going to hide everything except one color. And then I can tell from that whether things are lined up. For example, his halo and his staff there. By lining those up with the background, I know that then everything is where it's supposed to be. The staff looks now where it's supposed to be, his hand in place. His halo's where it's supposed to be. Let me check the bottom. Looks good. Yeah. So everything lines up. So now I can use the background for a guide. So I'm going to turn off the background as long as I'm here and I've got the black lit up. And I'm going to delete this halo and any of those miscellaneous things sticking out there, because I'm going to be redoing the wings and the halo. So I don't need these. So I'm going to use the Polygon Select tool. Polygon Select tool lets you mark lines around an area, and then everything inside that area that isn't sticking out of the area, and that's a big if, will be selected. So I mark this area, and everything that's totally inside that area I can then delete. Now notice not everything got deleted because some of those go beyond the line that I marked. and I'll still delete them if they're not much beyond the line. If they're major problem, in other words, they're in that area but a lot of work in another area, then I'll just delete the nodes. I think you've seen me do that on other videos, and I'll certainly be doing it on this one. Okay, turn back the background on. I wanted to see what my color palette was there. I was looking for a particular color. All right, now I'm hiding them. Those are the colors that I'm working with right now. And I probably won't use more than those. That looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, about 16 colors. And I started with 25. So I've gotten rid of 9 colors. All right. So what I'm showing you is I want to make these lines in his wings. Maybe not all of them, but a number of them, so that he looks like he has wings. And I'm going to do that right on top of the background. Leave the black color selected, and just work right on his wings. So I'm going to pick, I guess it didn't have the brown that I wanted. I'm going to open the digitizing and tell it to digitize a line. And I'm just going to use plain running lines for this. And just start, I think I'm using a brown. And just go over the lines, up and down. And again, I'm not going to make you watch me do the whole wing area. I'll just do some of it and then skip to the next. This will take quite a while. And I'll be outlining not just the feathers in the wings, but anything that, like his sash, if it's not already outlined, I'll probably outline it, the globe, his hand. Photo stitch is nice, but you almost always have to go in and put outlines in, because otherwise, again, it's made so the colors blend together with your eye. Sometimes they blend too much and they look washed out. So putting some lines in is helpful to keep your eye focused on, so that it sees what it should see. And this is basically just following those lines, going back and forth. I picked this angel Raphael because because of the beautiful wings also, but because I didn't want to picture a traditional picture of him, with the fish, and because there are so many colors in those that you have to do a lot of photo editing before you can bring it in. All right, so here I'm doing the halo. I finished the wings. I skipped ahead. I've gone around most of the things, like his hands, his staff. I'm also going to go around his sash, his other hand. I'm doing his hand right now. Photo stitch does not do outline stitches. It just does colors. And so if there isn't a definitive dividing line between areas, you need to put one in so that the eye sees them for what they are, especially when they're so small. If it's a very large picture, let's say you just have his face, nothing else but his face, and it's taking up the whole hoop, then you mightn't have to do that. But these areas are very small, and so you need to outline each one just so that the eye can travel those lines and see what it's supposed to see. Because again, photo stitch is more interested in the colors and the blending of the colors with your eye, and so it doesn't care about outlines. With great works of art, that's particularly a problem. I mean, I have done great works of art and made them into nice appliques. For example, like Our Lady of Guadalupe, or some of the other works of art of Our Lady, or Our Lord's Resurrection or Crucifixion or whatever. And I have done them, but usually you have to go into the photo editing and separate them into sections so that you can separate the colors better. Because Photoshop, again, you're telling it you only want 20 colors, and it will pick the 20 that it sees as the biggest ones, the most important ones, and they might be the most important ones as far as you're concerned. So sometimes you have to separate whole areas of a picture, so that, and then go in later and delete a lot of those colors. You'll end up, if you divide a picture, for example, the Last Supper, I think I divided it into Da Vinci's Last Supper. I think I divided it into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sections. Each group of 3 apostles, the top and the bottom, and then our Lord in the center. So there was 3 in the middle, 2 on each side. And just because you could not possibly do that all as one picture, there just were too many colors. Then afterwards, you can go in and delete a lot of those colors and come down to a palette of 20. Because you'll be combining, it'll say like there's 5 greens, and you'll combine it down to 3 greens or 2 greens. And then you'll use the same colors in each section. All right, now I'm going to go around his hand here. Again, it's important to outline the hands, faces, put in eyes, nose, and mouth, and things like that, because it doesn't do it. And it does make all the difference in the world. Okay, that's his. I'm pulling this, stopping this because I'm finished, but I also want to double check, make sure that I have all the nodes where they're supposed to be, right at the edge of his hand. Okay. That looks good. And the next thing I think I'll do is, since I'm right here, is probably that chiro. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do, is the chiro. It had a chiro. It was really messy. I'm going to do a very clean one and then erase the messy one. So right now I'm going to do the clean one, and then later I'll go in and delete the messy one. So I'll go around. Again, I'm using a line stitch, running line, and just going around up and down a couple of times in each direction. Just twice. All right, there's twice in each direction there. Oh, twice, once, twice. Do it to the center, then once, twice, to the center. Actually did 3 that time. All right, I'm doing another one up and down. That's 3 that way. And around the P. And I want to see what that looks like. I'm going to turn off the background. It doesn't look dark enough, especially around the P part, the straight up and down. So I'll come back and do some more on it. My cursor doesn't have a yellow thing on it, really. It just does that. The video program puts that yellow cursor. That would be really annoying to work with that thing. But it's done so that you can see where the cursor is, where I'm working. I can turn it off if it's annoying to you. All right, up and down a few more times. Making sure all of these are. Notice a couple of them are thicker than others, and that may be planned. You can see all the lines in the background of the wings. Okay, still don't like that curve on the P. It's just not dark enough. All right, try it again. Now let's turn on all of the colors and see that shows up much better. It's still kind of messy underneath, but I'll take those out. Now let's take a look at the whole thing. And he looks pretty good. I like the clothes, and that's really all I'm working on is wings and clothes. I'm not interested in his face because I'm going to redo his whole head, and I may redo his hands. It just depends on how good they look. The wings kind of, though, the brown in the wings defines the feathers, but you can't really see them that well. They blend too much into it. I'm going to make the lines black, and see if that looks better. And yes, that looks much better. Okay, so this is all for now, and I'll continue this in the next video.